with a storm system like this.
Senior Hurricane Specialist Stacy Stewart of the National Hurricane Center in Miami. The storm currently about 75 miles southwest of Key West. Maximum sustained winds at this hour about 40 miles an hour. Sealed charges filed and the waiting for an arrest now underway in connection with a probe into possible collusion between President Trump's campaign and Russia.
At least one person could be taken into custody as early as Monday in connection with Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation. No names or charges are spelled out in a Wall Street Journal report citing anonymous sources. The attorney for former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort tells Fox News that his legal team hasn't been informed of any indictment of his client.
That's Fox's Kathleen Maloney. The European Parliament's president applauding Spain's decision to call for a new election in Catalonia. This after that region's unilateral declaration of independence. This Spanish resident is hoping for the best.
Let's see. I think they have to speak it's to one another and try to make an agreement and try to listen our beliefs, our arguments. So it will be difficult, I think. There's still a lot of work to do.
The Spanish government removing Catalonia's president on Friday. Fox News, fair and balanced.
Air Comfort Service Heating and Cooling. Weather.
The official FM NewsTalk 97.1 Weather Center forecast. In the wake of a cold front, skies will eventually clear tonight. It will be cold with the freeze, though, a low of 31 degrees. Cool tomorrow, but dry. Partial sunshine, an afternoon high of just 55. Partly cloudy tomorrow night, a low down to 42. Then even cooler on Monday. Mostly cloudy skies will only rise to a high of 52 degrees. I'm meteorologist Steve Travis for FM NewsTalk 97.1.
Trending on FM News Talk 97.1.
Giving over such a large percentage of that uranium.
It's disgraceful.
No credible evidence.
The DNC, this Russian dossier.
Stay connected.
They do not want to get the real story of the Russian intrusion of our election.
We passed a budget one step closer to historic tax reform.
FM News Talk 97.1.
They drew a line in the sand.
Younger, smarter.
To fight the opioid crisis.
Better.
FM NewsTalk 97.1 presents Psych with Mike, with Michael Mahon. Brought to you by Royal Gate Dodge. Royal Gate Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram, with the largest inventory of new Dodge vehicles in St. Louis. Visit them in Ellisville, Missouri or Columbia, Illinois. Online at royalgatecars.com. This is Psych with Mike.
Good evening and welcome into the Royal Gate Dodge Studios. We are going to actually have a conversation tonight about a topic that is difficult but is important. Before I introduce that, I just want to talk to producer Frank for 1 second.
Hello.
So you went to Seinfeld last night.
At the fabulous Fox Theater.
And I'm assuming that was as awesome as advertised?
It really was. I had not seen Seinfeld perform live ever, so it was. I had some expectations, and they were met, and they were exceeded, and it was just constant laughter the whole night. I mean, you know, the man is what everybody thinks he is. He's really, really good. Mm-hmm. He's really talented, and it's a very polished act. There is no wasted time at all. And it moves along really quick, and then suddenly, you know, you're out of there, and it's midnight. It's a 2-hour show, and It just flew by, and so much about it is just like it's very, very well done. And you know, we all know how great of a comedian he is, but to see it on stage was really fun.
Mm-hmm. So, did your abs hurt afterwards?
Yes, abs hurt, and my face this morning, because of all the smiling, my cheeks hurt.
And, that's kind of amazing. We think about that. They say that it takes fewer muscles to smile than it does to frown, which is biologically correct.
But they hurt today.
But which means that you don't use them as much as maybe you should, because
perhaps.
They were getting a little bit of a workout. So your wife went with you?
Yep.
And
wife
she
and
loved it?
A couple friends. She loved it. Her laugh was carrying through the theater. Mm-hmm. People, I'm sure, heard her laugh.
Well, I am glad that you guys had a great time. I am scheduled to go to the live DGS show next week, and so I am really looking forward to that. But Seinfeld, obviously, for as much as I love and respect Dave Glover, this is a different level. Right.
A different level and a different act, and what's amazing is that with so many comedians out there that are a little dirty, you could take your grandmother to go see Seinfeld.
Right.
I mean, the pious of the people in the world would not have found anything offensive in that act. There's no foul language. It's everything about it is family friendly. Mm-hmm. It was great.
Well, and obviously, he is, from everything that I don't know comedy like Dave knows comedy, but he is the person that everybody who does comedy aspires to. He is the guru of comedy in the United States today, and so you can't get higher than that. It's really kind of an amazing get for St. Louis, really, after U2 got canceled. To have Seinfeld in town is really fantastic.
And he's here on this, obviously on a tour, and he's been here a handful of times. And what's just amazing is it's a 2-hour set, and it's no notes. It's all memorized, and it's seamless. There's no hiccups. There's no flaws. It's just one of these deals. You're like, wow, this guy is really good.
He is a consummate professional.
Surprising, the man's 63. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize he was that old.
Right.
63.
Yeah. He looks good. He
looks really
fantastic.
great.
Yeah. I mean, like Letterman and those guys, when they had left and they grew the big bushy beards and everything, and Jon Stewart, and they look like monks. I mean, Seinfeld looks like he could go do the TV show tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he looks great. Okay, so I am glad that you had a great time. I just want to let everybody know we are going to talk about child sexual abuse tonight, and I had struggled with this all week. I had been in contact with producer Frank all week saying, I really feel like that this is something I want to talk about. I know it's important information. There's a reason why it was on my mind this week that I will get into in just a little bit. But I just want to say I have been doing this kind of presentation for a long time, and I always start off by saying this is difficult information. If you find that you have a reaction to what we're going to talk about, then you should give yourself a break. So don't force yourself to listen because you feel like that it's important or you feel like you should. You should go away from the radio. You can always podcast the show. You can go to michaelmahon.org. At the top navigation bar, there's a Psych With Mike button. You click on that, and the shows are listed by date. You can go to the show. Today is the 26th of October? 28th of October. So you click on that, and that will give you tonight's show if you would like to get a hold of the show later as a podcast. And if anybody has issues with what we're talking about tonight and would like to contact me privately, again, you can get a hold of me from michaelmahon.org. There's a contact me button there, and I will respond to you as quickly as possible. You can always follow me on Twitter at Psych With Mike, and you can also then private message me on Twitter if you would like to get a hold of me. So I just wanted to start. I was thinking about if I was going to do this, how would I talk about why this is on my mind tonight because of what's going on this week, or would I start chronologically? And it made more sense in my head to start chronologically. So I'm going to start when my introduction to this issue began and then move forward in time. My introduction to this issue was that all of us probably remember that in the 90s, in the late 80s and then into the 90s, there was a spate of accusations that came out against priests in the Catholic Church that became a groundswell and made people want to go out and prosecute individuals and bring civil cases, and this was a big deal, and so much of a big deal that the Catholic Church eventually had to respond to it. And so there was a big meeting of cardinals and bishops that happened in Texas, and as a result of that meeting, there were certain proclamations that were made where all of the archdioceses had to have sexual abuse training that was provided to not only the priests, but also to every member of the Catholic Church that would have any contact with an individual under the age of 18. Now, if you know anything about the Catholic Church, you know that the Catholic Church is a big organization and that they do a lot of things with kids, from CYC to, all of the church activities to the schools. And so this was a really, really big endeavor. As a matter of fact, initially, when the Catholic Church had estimated, and I don't remember what the exact numbers are, so don't quote me on these numbers, but they had anticipated that the first couple of years that they would train somewhere around 300,000 people, and it turned out that their numbers were off by a factor of 10. So what ended up happening is that there were a tremendous number of individuals who had to be trained, and it became a very, very overwhelming project. My introduction to this project was that at the time I worked for a group practice, West County Psychological Associates. So it is very likely that someone in the audience has heard of West County Psychological Associates because of your association with the Catholic Church. We did a tremendous amount of consultation for the schools and for the archdiocese. So basically, the archdiocese has a psychological service, Catholic Family Counseling, that they have and that they maintain, but we provided additional consultative psychological services to the archdiocese. And so there was a group of us that were on the original team that worked with the archdiocese to set up their response to this edict that came out from the bishops to train all of these individuals. And what we came up with, the program that we put together, was called Protecting God's Children. And I was involved in the meetings that put that together and brought that program to St. Louis. And the decision that was made at the time was that the archdiocese would have professionals go out and do this. So that was not an edict from the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church didn't say you had to have professionals go out and do it. But one of the things that we had said to the archdiocese is, when you go out and you present this information, there are going to be a lot of individuals who are going to be very upset, who are going to be very confused, and you need to have people there who can, at least in the initial stages, be able to give good answers to people about why this is happening, what's going on, and to be able to convey the information in a knowledgeable way. And so the St. Louis Archdiocese was one of the very few dioceses across the country that actually used individuals who were of a professional capacity to go out and do these presentations. So I was one of the original individuals who went out and did this. And if you have been trained, if you were trained, I believe we had the initial meetings in 2002, and I think we started doing trainings in 2003. It might have been 2003 and 2004, but it was the early 2000s. So if you went through Protecting God's Children in the early 2000s, then it is a very high probability that I may have trained you. So you may even remember that, and hopefully that was a good experience for you. But I ended up training more people than anyone else in St. Louis, and still hold the record for a number of individuals trained. I really felt like that this was essentially a ministry for me, that this was important information and that it needed to be done, and that I wanted to do the best of my ability to convey this information in a compassionate way to try and help people understand the problem and to try and help them, if they had been touched by this horrible event in their lives, to try and help them to find whatever they needed to be able to, if not get closure, at least start the process of coming to grips with it. And so I went out and started to do these presentations, these workshops. And initially, these workshops were set up to be 3 hours long. And I was doing literally 4 or 5 of these a week to hundreds, sometimes a couple of hundred people at a time. And so we would go out and present a lot of the information that I'm going to be talking to you about tonight. But as a result of that, you can imagine there were a lot of people who would come up to me and would tell me just absolutely horrible, gut-wrenching stories about things that had happened to them and things that may be happening to them. A lot of the stories that were hardest for me to deal with were the stories when a parent would come up to me and say, hey, you know, I am being mandated by the court to release my child to someone that I know is doing these things to them, and I don't have any choice. I have to continue to do that, or else I'm going to be held in contempt. And that would just absolutely destroy my confidence in human beings as a species. And I eventually went to my therapist, and I've always said that if you're going to do therapy, you should be in therapy, or else that's probably you're not doing very good therapy. But I went to my therapist, and I remember sitting in her office, and I'm going to try and get through tonight without crying. I may not make it, but hopefully you will forgive me if I break down. But I went to my therapist's office and I said, look, I now know what is going on in the United States and specifically in the St. Louis area and how these kids are being hurt. And I don't think that I can live in a world where this is true. And I will tell you, this is a very private thing that I don't share with a lot of people. Now I'm sharing it over the radio. This is the only time in my professional career where I ever contemplated not continuing to do what I do, because I got to a point where I felt like that I just literally could not go in and hear these stories or work in an environment where this was true. I wanted to block this out of my conscious awareness. And I went to my therapist's office and I said, you know, I don't want to live in a world where this is true. And she said to me, are you helping people? And I said, yes, I think so. And she said, well, do you want to live in a world where you help people get better, where you help people heal from this? And that really meant something to me and was really the only reason why I became able to carry on. So I did this for a lot of years, trained literally tens of thousands of people, still hold the record for the most individuals trained in the St. Louis metropolitan area, but eventually transitioned out of that because it just was so incredibly overwhelming. And eventually I left that practice and went out on my own. But that said, so I've had this experience in my life where I have done a lot of research. I know a lot about this topic and tried to help a lot of people. That said, I have been called to be an expert witness several times in my career, and I've never made it to the witness stand. I would like to believe that it is because my CV is so good, curriculum vitae. So CV, curriculum vitae, is the academic equivalent of a resume. So when you are an academician, when you are in a teaching position, then it's called a curriculum vitae. I would like to believe that my curriculum vitae is so strong that when the defense sees, if I'm being called for the prosecution, when the defense sees my curriculum vitae, they say, oh, well, we can't possibly let this guy get on the stand because he'll just destroy us. So I've never actually been able to get to the witness stand, but I've always really, really wanted to. So I just recently got called to be an expert witness in a sexual abuse case, and it involved a young girl who was 5 years old, and I was preparing my testimony and working with the legal team and, letting them know what my thoughts about the situation were, evaluating the victim and developing a report and doing all this stuff. And when we got to the point where we were getting ready to go to court, the judge decided that he wanted this individual to testify, which was something that I was appalled by and had developed a very complex legal argument why I thought that was a bad idea, both based on psychology and based on legal doctrine. And one of the things that was incredibly eye-opening to me about this is that when I presented this to the attorney, he said, "Yeah, this is great. Can you send me all of your reference material?" So he wasn't able to put this together, even though I was able to put it together. And I will tell you why, because I have access to Washington University's entire library because I am a professor there. And that is really one of the reasons why I maintain my professorship there, is because it gives me access to the library, and you can't replicate that in any other way. But I had access to documents that even this attorney didn't have. And that really bothered me, because what that means is that individuals are facing this incredibly daunting task of presenting this case in court and trying to get justice for a victim. And a lot of attorneys really aren't prepared to go out and to present this case in a comprehensive way. And if you're an attorney out there and you're saying, "Oh, but wait, I could do that," I'm not trying to make fun of anybody or make any accusations. I'm simply saying that in my experience, there are a lot of times where that doesn't always happen in a very good way or a very comprehensive way. And so one of the things that I would say before we go to our first break is that if you are touched by this, or if you are dealing with this, make sure that the people that you have working for you understand the law, understand the issue, and are able to present both of those to the best of your defense. Because as we're going to get into, one of the things that is horrible about this situation is that the individual that is the victim is required to be their own advocate, and yet is not believed to be a qualified individual to be able to testify in court. So that is a catch-22, and that isn't fair. So we're going to go to our first break. If you have anything that you want to talk about on this issue tonight, area code 314-969-9797, 866-455-9797. Be right back.
Talk lines are open now, 314-969-9797, or toll free 866-455-9797. Follow Mike on Twitter at Psych With Mike.
Log on to 971talk.com/Halloween and check out the Dave Glover Show Halloween page, full of audio, video, and all the great stories from paranormal investigations at 971talk.com/Halloween.
Brought to you by the Wentzville Bluffs.
It's the Competition Crusher Sales Event, only at Royal Gate Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram. Our most aggressive event ever. Nobody else comes close, because we're slashing thousands and thousands off MSRP. Get Ram Power Days discounts on all new Ram and Jeep, plus drastic driving force savings on Dodge and Chrysler too. Better selection, top-of-the-line trade cash, and lower than low price drops. There's no other way to say it. Royal Gate just flat out crushes the competition. 2 convenient locations, Royal Gate in Ellisville, Missouri, and Columbia, Illinois. Just 5 minutes from South County. Shop RoyalGateCars.com. Then rush to the Competition Crusher Sales Event. Royal Gate, #1 for all the right reasons.
Royal Gate, the driving force.
For For your convenience, Royal Gate has extended service hours with full service on Saturdays. Combined inventory based on MWBC year-to-date 2017 sales.
Are you having trouble falling asleep or staying asleep? People with insomnia typically complain about poor or unrefreshing sleep and often suffer from drowsiness, lack of focus, and fatigue. I'm Dr. Joe Ojow with the Clayton Sleep Institute. There are several types of insomnia, and at Clayton Sleep, we can create the right treatment plan for you. If you think you have insomnia, call us at 314-645-5855 or visit ClaytonSleep.com. Clayton Sleep Institute, better sleep, better life.
Radio moves. Radio breathes. Radio never sleeps. And Next Radio keeps up. It goes where you go, so you never miss a beat. It's live, it's local, it's a connection. A shared experience, just you and your radio. And a couple million people, give or take. Next Radio keeps up. You thought that phone couldn't get any smarter? Well, it got simpler. It got leaner. It's got your back. And it'll keep you moving, winning, in the know. And it'll get you where you want to go. All in the palm of your hand. Next Radio, live and local, wherever you go.
Listen to your favorite FM stations with the free Next Radio app. Live and local, wherever you go. Download the free Next Radio app today.
Okay, forest animals, kids are coming to the forest, and it's up to us to make their visit a good one. Sparrow, have you practiced the most popular bird songs for the year?
Of course.
Catchy. I like it. River, how's the temperature?
It's a refreshing 52 degrees, man.
I love it. Turtle.
He's not here yet, man.
He's late every morning. Okay. Squirrel.
The forest has been preparing just for you. To learn more about cool things to do in the forest, visit discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Brian Kilmeade here. Join me Saturday on November 18th for a special morning event as we discuss my latest book, Andrew Jackson, The Miracle of New Orleans, The Battle That Shaped America's Destiny. The 97.1 Speaker Series event will be held at the J. Scheidegger Center at the campus of Lindenwood University. It's free to attend, but you can purchase VIP tickets that include a personal meet and greet with me, reserved seating, and a copy of my new book signed by me. Get all the details on my St. Louis visit at 971talk.com.
Presented by NTP Cybersecurity. Talk lines are open now, 314-969-9797 or toll free 866-455-9797. Now, more Psych with Mike on FM NewsTalk 97.1.
Welcome back into the Royal Gate Dodge Studios. So as we were discussing prior to the break, we're talking about childhood sexual abuse, and I was telling you a couple of stories about how my experience with this situation has evolved professionally. And I just want to make sure that I am reiterating if this information is difficult for anybody, or if you are having difficulty hearing it, then give yourself a break. Don't feel like you need to listen to the whole thing in its entirety if it is difficult for you. And you can always come back to it later. You can go to michaelmahon.org, and up at the top of the website there's a Psych with Mike link. You click on that, and the shows are listed by date. You can click on today's date, October 28th, and get back to this show or any of the shows that we've had in the series. But I was talking to my son, who is a licensed therapist himself, and today he was over at my house, and he's been on the show before, and so you guys know that, or if you don't know, his name is Michael R. Mahon, so his name is the same. When he was born, I had no idea that he would go into the same line of work, so that may have been poor planning on my part, but we share the same name. So he was over at my house, and he said, "Oh, what's the show about tonight?" And I told him, and he's like, "Oh, wow, that's heavy." He's like, "Did you clear that with the people at the radio station?" I'm like, "Well, look, actually, I don't think I have to clear anything. Am I correct on that, Frank? Do I have to clear anything?" No. So I don't think I have to clear anything. But I said, here's the thing: if people don't talk about it, then it doesn't get talked about. And is it difficult information? Absolutely. But the reason why it's difficult is because we are conditioned to not talk about it. If we were willing to have very open, very frank conversations about this topic, it would make it much more difficult for individuals to be able to operate and to perpetrate this kind of crime. So one of the things that I really strongly encourage people to do is to think about what we're talking about tonight and to have your own conversations about the subject, because that is one of the ways in which we actually inoculate our society from the predation of sexual offenders. The more that people know, it's just like with the Harvey Weinstein situation. Everybody now is coming out and they're saying, well, I knew or I suspected, and people who have been abused by him are saying, well, why didn't you say anything? Why would you know, or why would you think you know, and keep your mouth shut? And the same thing is true in this situation. Whenever this comes out, there are always people who will come out and say, well, I kind of thought maybe something weird was going on. And the parent or the caregiver of that individual will say, well, then why didn't you say something? Or the victim themselves will say, well, why didn't you say something? It doesn't make any sense that you thought you knew and you didn't do anything. So I want to just talk a little bit about what some of the statistics are, because I think that people are very much going to be surprised by this. And the first thing that I will tell you is, as always, I put information up on both the Twitter account and on the @Psych With Mike Facebook page. So there are a couple of links to some websites that can give you more information about this issue, and also can reinforce some of the statistics, but also give you numbers that you can be able to call to be able to talk to someone, or even be able to report a crime if you are aware that one is going on. So just some of the statistics, and I'll tell you that when I started doing this, one of the biggest resources that we used was Dr. David Finkelhor, and that is David Finkelhor, Finkelhor, and he's the director of the Crimes Against Children Research Center, and he is one of the most prolific researchers in this area of child sexual abuse. And based on research that has been done both by him at the Crimes Against Children Research Center and other places, what we know is that a lot of people are affected by this kind of a crime. So 1 in 5 girls and 1 in 10 boys is probably affected by child abuse. So that's 20% for women and 10% for men. And one of the things that we know is these kinds of statistics are based on reported cases. And when you think about child sexual abuse, especially during the Priest scandal, one of the things, or the picture that pops up into your brain is a young boy that is being molested by an older man. And so we know that this is horrendously underreported in males. And so that 1 in 10 figure, that 10% figure for males, is extremely low. The truth is that based on most evaluations by most developmental psychologists, the statistics are probably equal for males and females. So there's probably not a lot of difference between the number of individuals who are predated against based on sex or based on gender. So what that means is that probably 20% of the entire population is somehow affected by this kind of a crime. And that is a huge, huge number. And what it means is that this is one of the most unreported crimes that happens in the United States. And that is horrible. That's why I am saying, when I talked to my son and he said, wow, this is a hard subject. Are you sure you want to do that? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And the more I talk about it and the more that I think about it, the more that I'm thinking, you know what? Not only do I want to talk about it tonight, but I'm going to continue to talk about this because this is a subject that we need to be having more conversations about. I know it's hard. It's easier for us to try and put it away and not think about it because it is such a difficult subject, but that is what makes it easier for people to be able to get away with. 20% of the population is affected by this kind of a crime, and yet we don't have conversations about it because it makes us uncomfortable. That doesn't make any sense. Probably a lot of people think about, when we think just generally about this idea of exploitation, probably a lot of people may remember that Paul Rubens, so you know who Paul Rubens is? So Pee Wee Herman, Paul Rubens, was actually prosecuted for possession of child pornography. So Paul Rubens, even though I think that he's kind of a funny guy, he is a little bit of a weird egg, and he was arrested and prosecuted for masturbating in a pornographic theater, and then later was arrested and prosecuted for possession of child pornography. And when Paul Rubens went to court over this charge, I don't know if anybody remembers this or not, but he actually got off. And the reason he got off was because he mounted a very novel defense that I'm not sure would pass muster today. But back then, this was years ago that this occurred, it was something that the court took into consideration. But Paul Rubens said that his collection of pornographic images was actually not a collection of child pornography, but was a collection of vintage photography, because most of the images that he collected predated 1920. So what does that mean? What that means is that since the camera was invented, somebody somewhere was taking pictures of naked little people. And before that, they were painting pictures of naked little people. And before that, they were drawing images of naked little people on cave walls. So this has been happening since the advent of humanity. And it isn't something that is new, but we now know enough about it that we can start to do things to try and protect people. And the reason we can start to do things is because we do have these statistics. So we know 1 in 10 or 1 in 20 is being affected by this, so 20% of the population. And what we also know is that most of these individuals, most of the perpetrators, are known to the victims. So 30% of all predation is committed by a family member, and 60% is committed by a trusted friend, someone that the family knows well. So 90% of all child predation is committed by somebody in the family or somebody that the family knows and trusts. And that is a vital part of why this can continue to go on, because there are some things that we're going to talk about after the next break that are ways in which predators try and get their opportunities to take advantage of young people, and those are called psychological and physical grooming. But to be able to engage in these kinds of grooming behaviors, to be able to have access to these children, you have to be somebody who is trusted by society, by the family, to be able to get access to these kids and to be able to have the alone time that you can have to be able to commit the act. So 90% of all predation is being perpetrated by individuals that are well known and trusted by the family. So that means that we know these people that are doing it, and we need to be aware of how they are trying to groom the children and groom us, so that we can identify behaviors that make kids at risk, but also to be able to come up with policies that we can employ in society to be able to keep these individuals away from children. All right, so we're going to go to our second break. If you have any questions or comments, again, area code 314-969-9797, 866-455-9797. Be right back.
And instead of saying all of your goodbyes, let them know you.
Follow Mike on Twitter at Psych With Mike. Talk lines are open now, 314-969-9797, or toll free 866-455-9797. This is Psych with Mike.
Traffic reports at your fingertips. Real-time traffic online. Log on to 971talk.com for real-time traffic updates.
Brought to you by Frank Lita Acura, with 0.9% financing going on now. Can't beat a Lita. Online at litaacura.com.
It's the Competition Crusher Sales Event, only at Royal Gate Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram. Our most aggressive event ever. Nobody else comes close, because we're slashing thousands and thousands off MSRP. Get Ram Power Days discounts on all new Ram and Jeep, plus drastic driving force savings on Dodge and Chrysler too. Better selection, top-of-the-line trade cash, and lower than low price drops. There's no other way to say it. Royal Gate just flat out crushes the competition. 2 convenient locations, Royal Gate in Ellisville, Missouri, and Columbia, Illinois. Just 5 minutes from South County. Shop RoyalGateCars.com. Then rush to the Competition Crusher Sales Event. Royal Gate, #1 for all the right reasons.
Royal Gate, the driving force.
For your convenience, Royal Gate has extended service hours with full service on Saturdays. Combined inventory based on MWBC year-to-date 2017 sales.
I'm waking up my day. Let's get it started. Turn it up, turn it on. Keep the morning moving right along.
Hi, everyone. I'm John Perchborn.
And I'm Lisa Hart.
On behalf of our morning news team,
including Kevin Steincross, Margie Ellisor,
Randy Naughton, Kim Hudson,
and Glenn Zimmerman,
we want to thank you for watching Fox 2 News in the morning.
See you Monday.
It's the Competition Crusher Sales Event, only at Royal Gate Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram. Our most aggressive event ever. Nobody else comes close, because we're slashing thousands and thousands off MSRP. Get Ram Power Days discounts on all new Ram and Jeep, plus drastic driving force savings on Dodge and Chrysler too. Better selection, top-of-the-line trade cash, and lower than low price drops. There's no other way to say it. Royal Gate just flat out crushes the competition. 2 convenient locations, Royal Gate in Ellisville, Missouri, and Columbia, Illinois. Just 5 minutes from South County. Shop RoyalGateCars.com. Then rush to the Competition Crusher Sales Event. Royal Gate, #1 for all the right reasons.
Royal Gate, the driving force.
For your convenience, Royal Gate has extended service hours with full service on Saturdays. Combined inventory based on MWBC year-to-date 2017 sales.
Hey, if you want granite, won't you want to go to the place where the designers and the builders go? That's right, Aphrodite Granite, and now there is still time. You can order by 12/4 and still get everything for your family gathering. Let's face it, everyone gathers around the kitchen, and how about an Aphrodite Granite kitchen? That's right, all-size kitchens starting only $19.95. They install 50 kitchens a week because their prices and quality are the absolute best. AphroditeGranite.com.
Jamie Allman in the morning.
Hey, Monday, all the craziness from around the weekend. We got the Gateway pundit, Jimmy Hoft, and of course, Rod the Bod People and Rob Raines on sports.
On FM News Talk
97.1.
Do you
Talk lines are open now, 314-969-9797, or toll free 866-455-9797. Now, more Psych with Mike on FM News Talk 97.1.
Welcome back into the Royal Gate Dodge Studios. So just kind of to recap where we're at so far, I told you my story about how I got involved in professionally in this child sexual abuse issue. And I had talked a little bit about some of the statistics because I just don't think that people really understand what is going on and how common that this is, and some of the things that we can do to identify the behavior, because it is affecting so many people, and some of the things that we can do to inoculate society. But first, we have Ray on the phone. Hello, Ray.
Hey, Mike.
How are you?
I'm doing great. It's a very difficult subject, and I think it needs to be talked to, and I'm glad that you're an advocate for it, as well as your son. What I understand in your intro was that you have access to this information at WashU,
mm-hmm.
and that unless the defense lawyer for this 5-year-old child has someone like you on his team, that child's not going to get an adequate defense against this pervert.
That's probably true, yes.
Right. And so doesn't the child become victimized again by the court?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and that was my whole argument that I was making. Now, just to be clear, so what happened was that in the course of this case, the question was, should the child be on the stand, or should not on the stand, but should the child testify in their own behalf? And there's a way in which they do that. And one of the things that I know is oftentimes the case is that the defense will try and undermine the credibility of the witness. And so I went out and found information that said that that was not how you were supposed to treat a child. And so you weren't supposed to necessarily get hung up on details like exact time, exact place, and things like that, because a child thinks differently than an adult and may not be able to hold all of those very pedantic details in their mind. And so this came from the law library at Washington University. So when I presented this to the attorney, he said, well, I'm trying to find this stuff. I can't find it online. Well, because he may not have the same kind of access to that kind of information. And so I provided him that information. But yes, you are exactly right. That is why I'm talking about it. Anybody who is out there who may be dealing with this situation, it is important not that you necessarily have me on your team, but that you have somebody on your team who, number one, understands the differences between the developmental stages of a child and an adult, and who can present that information confidently and competently in a courtroom, in addition to being able to testify to the veracity of the child's testimony.
Yeah. Well, Mike, God bless you and people like you and your son. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to follow up on that, the statistic on the number or the veracity of a child's statement, only 6% of all allegations of sexual predation are false. 6%. So 94% are true, even when the child recants later. So what happens is that a child will come out and they will make a claim because they will say something to a trusted adult. And then later, you have these hordes of people, some of them, who are good meaning. You're going to be investigated by Child Protective Services. You're going to have to, go into a room where a bunch of people are going to ask you exactly what happened and give you anatomically correct dolls and ask you to show exactly what happened with the dolls. And you're talking about children who are very, very young, maybe as young as, 5 or 4 years old, who barely are using language comprehensively themselves, and sometimes even younger than that. So the earliest documented case of child predation is 18 months, which is obviously horrible. but you're even talking about children who don't have the use of language yet, who may be the victims of this crime. And so obviously in that situation, that child can't even advocate for themselves. But these children are then being asked to do this, and it becomes really, really scary and intimidating for them. And for a child, it's easier to then say, nope, this is done, didn't happen, I take it all back, because they don't want to continue to go through the process. Just because a child recants later does not undermine the veracity of their testimony or of the statement. So only 6% are false, and of that, the overwhelming majority are in cases, so 3% of that 6% are in cases where you have custody battles going on, and one of the parent accuses and grooms the child to make accusations against the other parent. So the majority of the false allegations are coaching, where the individual is trained to make allegations against the other parent because of custody. And then 2% are just simple misunderstandings. And then 1% are actually false allegations. So only 1% of allegations that are made in child predation cases. Now, we are specifically talking about cases of allegations when the child is under the age of 13. So is it possible that an adolescent would technically, this would obviously be child predation because they're under the age of 18. An adolescent may actually be able to make allegations. They may be able to think abstractly, I want to get this person in trouble. But that brings into question the idea of what is a predator. So a predator is someone who is sexually attracted to the undeveloped human form. So once an individual gets to the age of adolescence, once they go through puberty, they're going to look much more like an adult. Then you can still predate against them. That can still be abuse, but it isn't necessarily the individual being a pedophile because that individual looks like an adult human being. So I want to make sure that I define some of the terms that I'm talking about. So psychological grooming is anything that a perpetrator does to try and get people to trust them. And physical grooming is anything that a predator does to try and make the child more accustomed to different forms of touch so that they won't balk or become scared or try and run away. So an example of psychological grooming is a predator who goes and volunteers to be the coach of a softball or soccer team, which is one of the things that happens in the Catholic system, but happens everywhere. It's not just, that this happens only in religious situations. So if an individual goes and volunteers to be a coach, then they're obviously going to have access to young people. That's one of the things that they do. And they will oftentimes present themselves as really, really good at their job because that earns trust and it allows them to gain access to children in an unsupervised way. So one of the things that we had talked about when we were doing this presentation is we should make sure that children are never alone with an adult by themselves. And what happens, bless you, and what happens is that a lot of times people will say, well, and this was one of the things that happened in the Boy Scouts when the Boy Scouts went through the very self-same thing as the Catholic Church is, okay, if I don't take these kids camping, then nobody's going to take these kids camping. And one of the things that I said when I was doing this presentation, and a Scoutmaster said that exact same thing to me is, well, I'm sorry, then the kids can't go camping. Because what we can't do is minimize or compromise our vigilance just because that then gives these children more opportunity. Because what happens is what the children can't do is know the difference between it's okay for coach to pat me on the butt because he's not a pedophile, but no one else gets to pat me on the butt. A child doesn't know how to understand that. So there either have to be rules or we make children vulnerable. So we have to have rules that are not violatable. And if we have those rules, then it makes it easier. What we can say to a child is if an adult ever put you in a situation where they are alone with you, start screaming bloody murder. Right? So if all the children who were ever alone with Jerry Sandusky would have started screaming bloody murder, I'm not going to tell you that no child would have ever been abused, but it would have drawn attention to what he was doing much sooner. So we make these rules and then we don't violate them. And that helps us to confront that psychological grooming piece. And then with the physical grooming piece, you know, what happens is that the guy will be standing on the sideline, or gal, because it can be either or, and you'll put your arm around the child's shoulders and talk to them, you know, and say, oh, you're such a great player, I'm really proud of you. And then the next time you go up to them, you move your hand slightly down between the shoulder blades, and then eventually to the top of the back, and then eventually to the butt. And what you are doing is grooming the child to accept more intimate forms of touch without being alerted to danger. And so one of the things that we have to say is, look, there's a zone. It starts from the shoulders and it goes to the knees. And nobody touches you in the zone, or if they do, you come home and tell me. Now, does that mean everybody who touches a child in the safety zone is a sexual predator? Of course not. It doesn't mean that. When my daughter went to kindergarten, her kindergarten teacher loved her. Her kindergarten teacher would touch her every day. And she would come home because I had trained my kids to tell me if anybody touched them in the safety zone. And every day she would come home and say, you know, my kindergarten teacher hugged me and touched me in the safety zone. And I was okay with that because I trusted her kindergarten teacher. But I knew, and knowledge is power. So if your child comes home every day and tells you if somebody touched them in the safety zone, then you now can make an informed decision about whether or not you think that that is something that is okay. But you have to teach your children to do this. So we have to be willing to have this conversation with our children. We have to be willing to say to our children, has anybody ever touched you in a way that made you feel uncomfortable, or done anything that ever made you feel uncomfortable? And if you ask your child that, then I guarantee you they're going to say yes. And you're going to say, oh yeah, who? And they're going to say, you, Dad, you do it. You do it all the time. Because when we go over to Uncle Stan's for Christmas, you make me hug Uncle Stan. And I don't want to hug Uncle Stan. Right? Uncle Stan smells like mothballs and he's got that hair growing out of his ears. It's unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. All right. So we actually force our children to do things that make them feel uncomfortable all the time without even thinking about it. And what we are doing is training them to be less safe because they don't know how to be able to make the difference between one authority figure doing that and another authority figure doing that. So what we have to do is think about logically, what do we do that actually reduces the safety of our children and makes them less safe when they go out into the world? Okay? So again, I'm going to continue to talk about this subject because I have come to realize that this is a really important thing, and if we don't continue to talk about it, then it goes by the wayside because it's really uncomfortable. It's easier to put it out of our minds. But again, anybody who is having an issue with this, you can get me on Twitter at Psych With Mike. You can go to my webpage, michaelmahon.org, michaelmahon.org. You can contact me there, or you can also get podcasts of the show at the Psych With Mike tab at the top navigation bar. So, as always, if you need to get a hold of me, you can get a hold of me that way. And we will continue to talk about this in the future. So next, stay tuned for the Blue Line. As always, on Saturday nights, if it's 8 o'clock, it's Psych With Mike.
It's the Competition Crusher Sales Event, only at Royal Gate Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram. Our most aggressive event ever. Nobody else comes close, because we're slashing thousands and thousands off MSRP. Get Ram Power Days discounts on all new Ram and Jeep, plus drastic driving force savings on Dodge and Chrysler too. Better selection, top-of-the-line trade cash, and lower than low price drops. There's no other way to say it. Royal Gate just flat out crushes the competition. 2 convenient locations, Royal Gate in Ellisville, Missouri, and Columbia, Illinois. Just 5 minutes from South County. Shop RoyalGateCars.com. Then rush to the Competition Crusher Sales Event. Royal Gate, #1 for all the right reasons.
Royal Gate, the driving force.
For For your convenience, Royal Gate has extended service hours with full service on Saturdays. Combined inventory based on MWBC year-to-date 2017 sales.
My name is Dale Pazinski. I'm 19 years old, and this is how I live united. I've always been kind of a computer geek, and I found a way to use those skills to help the homeless in my community. For people facing hard times, computer skills and a basic resume are so important. It may seem like a small thing, but it makes a huge difference in people's lives. So with United Way, I created a program where I work with the homeless. Together, we go through their whole job history, write a resume, and then save it on their very own USB drive. We provide workbooks and training